Okay, welcome to the live criminology session. My name is Mr. Aaron Mark Jones. I am the criminology teacher for e-sgol. I've been teaching for 34 years, and I've been teaching the criminology syllabus itself since its inception in 2015. I'm also an experienced examiner for WJC in various subjects, including criminology. Over the last few weeks, I've had the pleasure of presenting 3 presentations for students of criminology. And hopefully by now you may have had a chance to look at all 3. If not, I hope today's summary of the content of those lessons will help you understand the issues that we're covering, which is 2.3 and 2.4. And maybe if you haven't had the chance to see the videos yet, it'll give you the opportunity to do that later on. So in these lessons, we focused on 2.3, which is a sociological explanations of crime, and then pertinent, relevant parts of 4.1, which looked at the effects of the sociological explanations on the development of policies in the UK. In lesson 1, I looked at issues concerning 2.3. We looked at the functionalists and the Marxists and the interactionalist theories of criminality. In lesson 2, we did the right and left realism, and then moved on in lesson 3 to look at exam questions and how these issues pertaining to 2.3 and 4.1 actually materialized in the exam papers since 2019, because as you probably know, hopefully the exam papers changed, the format of the exam papers changed from 2019 onwards. Now, as you can see on the screen, we did focus on all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 theories of criminality, not so much left realism because it's so nearly as close to the Marxism. I felt that had been covered. But let's go quickly through some of the issues that we looked at. I'll look at some of the explanations, sociological explanations to start off with, and then we'll look at some further practice questions that you can try once you've looked at the 3rd video where we look at actual exam questions. And then if there's any questions at the end, then I'll be certainly in to take them. A few have come in already, but we'll have a look at those. So the first theory we looked at was the functionalist theory, and we did put much emphasis on Merton's string theory in this. So the functionalist theory said that there's basically a purpose to deviance and to criminality. It promotes change. It brings people together. It allows boundary maintenance. It tells us what's right and what's wrong. And it also acts as a warning light. It tells us in society whether there is a problem. Now, we mentioned Durkheim's theory of anomie, which is that some degree of crime and deviance is good for society, okay? But when society loses shared principles or norms, then it becomes a state of anomie, a state where crime is out of control. Now, the main theory, and the one possibly that you should focus on in your studies, is Merton's theory of brain. Now, Merton proposed a theory that people wanted to achieve the American dream, which is basically money, status, and power. And when they did not have the means of achieving those goals, it led to a strain theory. It led to people suffering from strain because they did not have the means to achieve those goals. Now, the response was about not being able to achieve those goals was 5-fold, but the 2 that interest us for criminology is the innovators, those who veered towards criminal ways to achieve material success, and the retreatists who possibly sought out other avenues of enjoyment, drugs, alcohol. So they retreated themselves from society. Now, those are the ones that invariably led to crime. Now, Cohen then developed Merton's idea and spoke about alternative status frustration. For example, young people who do not perhaps succeed at school, so they have a low status, and so create their own subculture that had values that were largely the reverse of mainstream values, okay? For example, selling drugs, fighting, stabbings, things you can see sometimes in the news relating to gang culture, especially youth gang culture in London at the moment. Now, we then looked at the effects of these on policy. Now, there are many examples that you can take from this, or your teachers would have told you other things, but these would have an effect consciously or unconsciously on policy. For example, minimum wage. If you're under 18 now, you should be getting £5.28 a week. An hour, sorry, not a week, an hour. Now, the idea behind that is it gives people the means to achieve the aims. Okay, the minimum wage for 23 and above is £10.42. So you can see there how the idea of helping people to be able to achieve their goals through the minimum wage might have been consciously or unconsciously influenced by functionalist ideas. Education in prisons is another example of giving people the skills they need in order to achieve their aims. Reading age in prison is about 11 years old. It's not much higher in the general public, but it is higher, it's 15. But by giving literacy lessons in prisons and numeracy lessons, numeracy skills in prison, about 9 years old. So by giving them these skills, it gives them the way to achieve their goals on release. Whether it works or not is another issue. So developing means to achieve goals in various examples. We saw a proposal by the government of Wales and the government of England to bring in new apprenticeships when it comes to post-16 education, bringing in new vocational courses. Now, again, that can be seen as a way to enhance people's ability to achieve their aims. And the levelling up agenda currently followed by the government, possibly, is a reflection of an attempt to raise standards in various areas of the country. For example, a means of addressing their goals would be the HS2 project, which didn't come through, but it was part of the levelling up agenda where the train would go from London to Birmingham and beyond Manchester, etc., and it would open up economic opportunities for various parts of England. Now, that can be seen as consciously or unconsciously influenced by the means, the policy of allowing people the means to achieve their goals. Now, we then moved on to look at Marxism, okay? And those are the terms that we discussed in lesson 1 or video 1 when we discussed Marxism. So the idea that we live in a capitalist society where profit and property is all important. And there were two types of people, according to Karl Marx, as you see on the screen there, in the current capitalist society when he was writing. The bourgeois, of course, they were the owners of property. They were the owners of capital, okay? So they owned the means of production. And on the other hand, you have proletariat. Now, these were the people who had their labor to give. That's all they had to offer, their labor, their work. They worked for the owners of production. So basically, what you can see is inequality within society, inequality of capital means and inequality of opportunity. So this capitalist society was based on consumerism, the need to buy, or the ideal that you should go for profit all the time. And this led to a crimogenic system of economy and government. Crimogenic meaning it's one that causes crime, because when inequality exists, in order to improve your lot in life, you will have to turn to crime. Okay, so in order to keep this system going, that's the last 2 points here, was the ideological state apparatus. So this idea is pushed onto us all the time. Crime statistics, according to Marxists, are falsified in order to create a false sense of fear about the defense of property that's needed. And you had the oppressive state apparatus, which is the police selectively policing the working classes or the proletariat at the time. So all this, of course, criminalizes the proletariat stroke working classes. Okay, and that's what the causes of crime were. And we looked at those in a bit more detail. If you have the chance, you can see that in video 1. Now, how this affected policy? Well, it has little direct effect, because being a capitalist country, it hasn't the Marxist ideas, Marxist influence on policies has been pretty slow. And what it has done really is bring attention to things rather than directly leading to change. But it has the fact that it's focused on different aspects of inequality or unfairness has perhaps consciously or unconsciously affected policy. For example, there's increased focus now on the crimes of the elite. Now, this might be a reason why there's a lot of mention in the news now about the vast amount of money spent on PPE during the COVID period, and how that many of that contracts went to government affiliated or government linked companies. Now, that has brought these issues to the fore. Another one, of course, is Partygate issues during COVID lockdown. So it has brought increased focus on those type, which is the crime of the elite, which Marxism claims is being ignored. It's brought attention to selective policing, the targeting of blue collar or street crime or working class crime, rather than focusing on crimes which allegedly cost more to the public than anything, which is white collar crime. It has also forced us to focus on corporate crimes. The Bhopal incident in 1984, when the Union Carbide company fluffed a lot of health and safety issues, and it led to a toxic cloud of gas being released in which 15 to 20,000 Indians as high as 20,000 may have been killed. Nobody has been brought to justice for that, but it has brought focus. Marxism has brought focus to why is that? Why has nobody been brought to task for this? Again, another one, the Zeebrugge. Zeebrugge, there's a double G and an E at the end there, misspelt. 1987, the Townsend Torrison Ferry Company. Again, health and safety issues, and 193 people died. And when the Herald of Free Enterprise left its moorings with the basically the door open. So it has brought these kind of corporate issues to the fore. Inequalities within the law, Trump facing 91 federal and state charges. Well, he and anybody else would be in jail by now, but because he has money, he can question every small nitty-gritty legal technicality. So again, it brings to the fore the unfairness of the legal system as it is, and the need to help people who can't afford the representation that Trump has to have representation. And a new crime is now important for every institution, which was brought in 2008, which is the corporate manslaughter, because there was a feeling there was too many companies getting away with negligent practices, and this may have been influenced by the focus given by Marxism on the power that the elite have. Then we looked at interactionist theories of criminality. This you'll be more than familiar with this because you would have done it in your Unit 1 coursework as well. So the labeling theory, so when somebody's labeled as a criminal, they think themselves a criminal, it becomes their master status, right? They can't see further than the fact that they're a criminal. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for them. They can't help themselves. So all this is something involved in interactionist policy, which you would have done. So I'm spending as little time as possible on the summary of this. Deviance amplification, of course, is another issue that interactionists bring attention to. The fact that it's blown out of proportion and it leads to possibly moral panics, which creates folk devils amongst certain categories of the public, be it mods and rockers or football hooliganism, etc. And of course, it brings to the fore this theory, the power of stereotyping and its effect on police attitudes towards certain groups in society. So again, the effects of policy we see here, possibly or consciously again or unconsciously, of the attitude towards crime committed by those under 18 years old. Police will do their utmost not to imprison people under the age of 18 because they know the power of labeling, right? The fact that somebody from a young age sees themselves as a criminal is a problem. Decriminalization again, has been a direct or indirect result of labeling, or the wish not to label people as criminals. The state of Colorado, for example, has decriminalized certain drugs now. I think it's 4 grams of any drug is allowed, and 3 ounces, I think, of marijuana is now treated as a misdemeanor because, okay, there may be financial constraints here as well, but because of the need, consciously or unconsciously, not to label people as criminal, and to criminalize behavior and see people act in criminal ways. I know this from my own experience, police and stereotyping. My own son is a policeman, and the police are kept really in touch when it comes to stereotyping and the need not to label people. So there's a big change in the policing culture when it comes to that. And of course, the theory has influenced the power of the press and how important it is that they use their power responsibly. And there are many, many instances now that curb the power of the press and their ability to spread fear where there is no fear. So this is something you'll be quite familiar with, and it's an interesting one for you to just note, because it is the question on interactionalist and policy development is the only question that WJC have not asked when it comes to 4.1. Okay. We then looked at probably the most powerful and the most influential theory when it comes to criminal behavior, which is right realism. That has been dominant in Britain for quite some time now, especially in the last 20 years. It's the main focus of many, many books by now. The fact that there's a belief within the right realist circle that people can make a rational choice to break the law. It's not something that happens because of poverty. People make a rational choice. They weigh up the cost of committing a crime against the benefit of committing a crime. And according to right realist theory, if the benefit outweighs the cost or the punishment, people will do the crime. Okay, so their ideas are based around that. So again, there's the idea, the Charles Murray. We discussed that one, and the problem of the underclass within society, people that Murray thought were dependent on benefit culture, single mothers who weren't socializing their children good enough, and how they have influenced right realist policy. The broken windows theory again is a right realist theory. If a place is shabby, bad appearance, it will invite criminal behavior. So the need to develop areas so that the broken windows theory is not invoked. Again, look back at the video if you want to know more about the broken windows theory. And punishment, well, the big one, of course, punishment, which is key to right realist views on criminality. Okay, more time, less crime. That's what they believe. Okay, more time, less crime. So what we've seen is a massive increase in the number of people in jail. Okay, the right wingism does not involve itself with the causes of crime really, although it does slightly. Okay, it's more to do with the reaction to. And don't forget the work that you may well have done about the crime control model of serving justice. Okay, now of course their influence on crime policy is massive, because the right have been in power in Britain and in America and other countries for quite some time. So what you have seen, of course, is more severe punishments. Okay, and they were at the start of January, I think, 2023, 90,000 people in jail. Okay, so that is more severe punishments that put a lot of strain on the system, but that's for another time. Prisons are full, and that brings with it associated problems. 285 assaults per 1,000 prisoners by June 2023. That's up 9%. 304 deaths in custody, 92 suicides, again up 24%. 65,000 self-harming within prisons, and attacks on staff up 13%. Now those figures are up to June 2023, so as up to date as you can get. But with it brings problems. Okay, they're taking them off the streets, and putting them in prisons. Again, that's one plan, but it brings with it associated problems. Increase in police powers, of course, is another thing that's been happening lately. Most recently, the Public Order Act of 2023, which has brought in new crimes, for example, carrying paraphernalia to enable you to lock down or causing serious disruption. The police have a right to stop you from doing that now. So again, if you want more detail about that, please look at the video, but it's certainly an issue. Zero tolerance, not one that has been vastly supported, but it has been, for example, in Cleveland, where Detective Superintendent Roy Mallon introduced it for a time, and did have a positive, if you like, effect on crime figures in his areas. Whether it went somewhere else is another issue. Social policies we've discussed, levelling up agenda, this idea of developing opportunities across Britain, because they don't believe it's crime. Sorry, they don't believe it's poverty that causes crime, because in the 50s and 60s, poverty went down. Well, the way of calculating poverty was changed anyway, but poverty went down, but crime went up. So right-wingism didn't believe in the idea of poverty. So levelling up agenda, however, sort of a bit different, sort of slight appreciation of that things need to change and levelling up is needed. So that levelling up agenda is influenced largely by the broken windows theory, where you need to increase opportunities for people. Again, links in with functionalism as well. And policies encourage the family unit have been implemented over the last 20 years as well. And don't forget, of course, the crime control model, if you've been taught about that one. So now, if you want more details about this, then go back to the videos or look at them if you haven't had a chance to see them as yet. Now, as part of the videos we did, we looked at how these issues relating to sociological explanations and their effects on policy appeared in exam papers from 2019 onwards. So if you want more opportunities to practice your skills, then you can look at exam papers before 2019, but be mindful, of course, that the exam papers have changed. Okay, for example, here we have the exam paper of 2018. Now, what you can do is use the scenario that they use in the 2018 paper to practice your skills. Once you've taught yourself about sociological explanations, and as you know, you'll have to do individual explanations and biological explanations as well, then by all means do look at previous papers. For example, this is a 2018 one, and you can use these to practice your skills. And you may have been given this one in a mock exam previously. If you have, great. If you haven't, well, dig it out. They're all available on the WJC website. Just type in criminology and scroll down until you see past papers. And in this piece, I've just highlighted here how you can use these papers. So it talks about Edna and Sydney being neighbours. Edna is obsessed with cats, and there's 40 of them. So I think possibly on this one, the labelling theory, interactionist theory about labelling would be a good one here. Because as you read this, I haven't got time to go over it now in this sort of live presentation, but you'll see Edna and Sydney are being labelled. Plenty of examples of them having deviant behaviour, elderly punk rocker, styles his hair in a spiked multicoloured mohawk, right, which is deviant behaviour, somebody is old. Edna, crazy woman, shouting abuse, okay? So labelled by the local society, the local people as mad, that may become master status for Edna. Perhaps it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. She's shouting at people, and it ends up in her at the end. There you see stabbing Sydney in the heart, which might be again an idea of master status and self-fulfilling prophecy. There's deviance amplification here, where the behaviour of Edna has been thrown out of all proportion. So we have here as well 2017 papers, okay, which you can use. You can use to think about the sociological explanations and how these can be seen within papers in 2017 and 18. Now, if you look back at the video number 3, you'll see that I've done 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23 within that particular presentation. So, but you can still use 17, 18, despite the fact that the questions are different. Okay, the questions and the tariff of the questions are different. Still use the 3 questions you see on the screen in front of you to describe and then to do the ones on that one. Again, there's another 2 here that I've copied from various books, okay, that you can use to practice your skills. Go back then and look at the issues I raised as being important. For example, within Marxism, what were the 7 bullet points I put in on the slide in this live session about bourgeoisie, about proletariat, about capitalist society, and see if you can use those in these slides as well. I'll put the PowerPoint up as soon as I can after this presentation, so you can do that one. Again, you can use the books. The WJC book has an example of Nick Leeson here, who broke the law and whose issues were to do with fraudulent behavior. I think the best one that this could be applied to is Marxism, or it could be applied to Merton's strain theory. Okay, but it's in the book, page 111, I think, in the WJC criminology book that you can use. And of course, Nielsen as well has a book that can be used as well, and they have certain scenarios within that. Okay, some questions have come in to me previously, just before this session, and somebody asked, what are the ideas of why are the ideas of right realism so influential in crime policies? Well, yes, it is the most powerful and is the most influential arm of political ideology that is currently dominating not only crime policies but social policy as well, and it has for the last 20 years, not only here but in America and many other countries. There was a belief towards the end of the 1970s that the Marxist and interactionist had been theorizing quite a bit about criminality, but that nothing really solid of any substance had come out of all this theorizing. For example, Marxism theorizes that criminality is inherent because of a capitalist society. So their answer, of course, is to destroy or get rid of the capitalist society. Well, I can't see that happening anytime soon, so it wasn't really practical solution to crime at the present time. So realism, both left and right, really, developed with the idea that the time for big theorizing had come to an end, and you had to work with government to find answers to criminality, which was on the increase. Now, generally, the governments at the time, beginning with Mrs. Thatcher, wanted to spend less money on things like welfare. They wanted to spend less money on taxes. So, but this crime was one field where they really felt they needed more government intervention than any other aspect. So there was the more focus developed on the idea of rational choice, okay? That the focus therefore was on punishment, increasing the power of the police. They refused the idea, as I mentioned before, that poverty had anything to do with criminality, because as I said, in the 50s and 60s, poverty went down, and yet criminal numbers went up. That could be because the police got better in the 50s and 60s, but the idea the right realists had was that it wasn't related to poverty, that people were intrinsically just selfish. So they wanted to increase social control. Okay, a theme that you've done throughout the year. They wanted to increase social control. They thought it was absolutely a necessity, okay, because people were responsible for their own behavior, but they needed, therefore, to be control. Now, that ties in nicely, as I said, with the ideas that developed in the 80s about rational choice theory, which is quite simple theory, whether you believe it or not, and the broken windows theory, okay? Because you needed to improve standards, improve the environment, and then it would lure crime away, okay? Now, the ideas of Charles Murray about the underclass or a subculture of criminality that weren't socializing their kids right, that they were depending too much on welfare, again channeled into this. Okay, so what you've seen is policies to prevent criminal behavior by, for example, situational crime control, environmental crime control, which, you know, you're talking about more police, zero tolerance, arresting people for even the smallest of crimes, CBOs, community behavioural orders. Okay, and when it came to buildings and surrounding area, a policy of target hardening, making it more difficult for crime to take place in those areas. Now, of course, the argument is that they just move the crime somewhere else, which is quite a strong argument, but it was what the policy entailed, and it's the policy they've stuck with for the last 10, 15, 20 years, which is that punishments work, despite a gathering folder of evidence that actually may not be actually true. And there's a lot of countries now trying various forms of punishment rather than incarceration for a long time. But you can see these policies in Britain, where there are 90,000 people in jail, in America, where there are 2 million in jail, 5 million under supervision of criminal authorities, but 2 million in jail, which is quite an amount. There are 2,330, I think, on death row. That has actually decreased over the last couple of years, but the trend is towards stiffer punishments and more severe treatment of criminal behavior. So the answer is why the ideas of the right is so influential in crime policies. It's because they're dominating politics. Okay, it's dominating the political environment. Now we'll see how that develops over the next year. Yeah, somebody asked me also, what questions haven't they asked? I don't think question spotting is a particularly good idea, having been involved in setting questions for other subjects and across the board over the last 34 years. Question spotting isn't something but the question's been asked. So looking at past papers, especially from 2019, but we do mention 2018 here, you can see on the right there gaps and possible questions which they could ask. They have actually asked the first one. Okay, the one on the right. Describe one social structure theory of criminality. Well, social structure theory would be functionalism, okay, or Marxism, the structure of society. Theories that focus on the structure of society, and those would be functionalism or Marxism. Okay, so if that comes up, remember what they're asking there. Okay, describe how interactionism would explain criminality. Yes, I did point that out to you when I went over it. They haven't asked that particular question. Also, describe how realism, right realism or left, would explain criminality. Well, I've spent a lot of time now on right realism. Left realism is very similar to Marxism, but they don't use the term bourgeois and proletariat. Okay, but apart from that, they focus again, like Marxism do, on the inequality within society, inequality of society itself, the inequality of opportunity, and the inequality in wealth, etc., etc. So that's the focus of that. Okay, so when it comes to 2.3, you could certainly make a mental note of those three. And then when it comes to 4.1, which questions have not been asked? Well, they haven't specifically asked for the use of right realism or the power or the influence of right realism in informing policy development. That's why, one reason why I spent quite a bit of time discussing that today with you. And they haven't actually asked a question on how the use of interaction or how interactionism itself has influenced policy development. So again, I'm not a big fan of question spotting because it honestly bears no correlation to what actually happens when questions are set. Okay. Again, somebody just asked me for another example, and I can't be sure where this one comes. I think it comes from the WJC textbook. So Jane dreams of a life with fast cars and exotic holidays, but only receives a minimum wage working as a nanny for a top lawyer in London. She was never very interested in school, where her teachers told her she would end up in a dead-end job. For the last few months, she has been stealing clothes from stores, and last week was caught by a member of the security staff. She has to return to the police station next week to see if she faces criminal charges. Well, just a few things here to pick up. Okay, this is how you apply your knowledge to the scenario that WJC will give you. So Jane is dreaming of a life with fast car and exotic holidays. Well, that would tie in nicely, wouldn't it, with Merton's strain theory. So she's obviously wanting the American dream. She can't get it. Okay, she has no means of achieving the goals, right? So she is under strain. Okay, she's experiencing Merton's strain theory. So what does she do? She innovates and she steals. Okay. Again, it says in the scenario, receiving minimum wage. So that again, Merton's strain theory, or you could bring in there Marxism and the theory of inequality. She's receiving minimum wage, but she's working for a top lawyer in London. So I would imagine there's a bit of inequality there in the amount of money being doled out. So she's working as a nanny for a law firm in London. Okay, they're the bourgeois. She is the proletariat. She's suffering from deprivation, inequality. She's been arrested, possibly. That's a sign of protecting the property of the rich because she's stolen. And it could be an idea of selective policing or the oppressive state apparatus at work. Okay. What else we got? We've got she's in a dead-end job, or perhaps she's been labelled. That would bring in interactionist. She's been labelled as a failure through her entire life, so this has become a master status for her. A lot of frustration going on there, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. She sees herself as a failure, sees herself as not being able to achieve, so she turns towards criminal behaviour. So those are the things that you can get from just by using one example from a book and trying to apply your knowledge. Of course, they won't ask you, I don't think, about all what sociological. They'll ask you to pick how one sociological explanation can explain the behaviour there. I think that's all I've got for you now on this issue, and hopefully I've answered all the questions that have been asked today. Thank you for joining me on this series of videos. Hopefully I'll have the opportunity to do some more for you next year, and I wish you all the best. If there are any questions in the Q&A, then I will certainly answer them.